What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the 6th episode of the Eurostep podcast. We're back after a long hiatus. I'm Zach Hummel, and I'm joined by my right-hand man, Cole Little. What's going on, Cole?
Nothing much, man. Can't believe NBA season's another one's already about to gear up. But I think there's a lot of excitement going into this NBA season, about the most I guess we've had since LeBron and Bosh chose to team up with D Wade and South Beach.
Yeah, I actually attended a Celtics-Hornets preseason game down at the Mohegan Sun down here in Connecticut. The environment was electric. I was probably the youngest one there. A lot of old Celtics fans down there, and everyone was happy to see Kemba Walker and Jeremy Lamb, who now play for the Hornets. But yeah, preseason basketball, I'm kind of over it already. I kind of just want to get to the regular season. You know, everyone's chomping at the bit to see how this season will go. We'll save our NBA preview for the next episode. We just wanted to quickly touch on a couple topics before the season really gets going. Obviously, Kevin Garnett announced he's retiring. Kind of came out of left field because people thought he was going to play this year with the Timberwolves. In KG fashion, he kind of kept it under the vest. He didn't want to make a big deal out of it. He didn't have that, like we saw with David Ortiz, that tour during his last season. So KG retiring, crazy news. Obviously, I'm a Celtics fan. I knew you're a big fan of KG, just the way he plays the game. So what are your thoughts on him retiring?
Well, yeah, I mean, as a kid from upstate South Carolina, I've always had a love for KG. He's always been my favorite player. It's tough seeing him hang it up. I mean, of course, he hasn't really been true KG for the past 2 or 3 years. He's just kind of been the veteran voice off the bench. I know he was real close to a lot of the young Timberwolves players, and they were sad to see him go, such as Towns and Wiggins. But yeah, I mean, it's what a career. I mean, honestly, one of the most underrated, underappreciated careers in the history of the NBA. He really changed the face of the NBA because people forget that when he decided to go pro straight out of high school in '95. That this didn't really happen then. I mean, he honestly didn't have hardly any one and dones back then. And he became the first guy to go pro out of high school in around 20 years or so. And if not for him, Kobe's career probably wouldn't have been the same. LeBron's career. He helped get max contracts installed. He was one of the first superstars to really go after the money, which he had every right to with that Timberwolves team. But yeah, I mean, this tenacious on both ends of the floor, really changed the way power forwards played. He was listed at 6'11" throughout his career. I think it's common knowledge he was at least 7 feet, probably 7'1". But yeah, just an amazing player. I mean, you got to wonder how his career would have turned out if during his peak years the Timberwolves weren't so bad. Of course, they had a couple good years, especially during his MVP season in 2004. But just the way he played the game, the intensity, the passion. It was all there, and I think a lot of guys respected him for that. I think a lot of guys tried to emulate that because, before KG came into the league, it was kind of taboo for big men to act like that and to, be hot shots. So a lot of guys were like, Tim Duncan. And that's probably why he and Duncan were such big rivals throughout their career because they were polar opposites. But, KG, he got the one title with Boston. You got to wonder if maybe some various injury issues with the Celtics hadn't gone against the grain, that maybe he would have won more than one, but at least he got the one. And, kind of unfortunate that his career those last couple of years, he was coming off the bench, not playing a whole lot, but, he had some knee issues, and that's just what happens when you get old. But, what a career. Obviously, he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer, probably one of the top 5 power forwards ever for sure, maybe even higher than that. And, really changed the impact, really changed the face of the game throughout his career, really.
Yeah, I mean, I was a huge KG guy even before he got to Boston. I was always a big fan of him. I played basketball through high school and a little through college. And I played that power forward position that could stretch out in a pick and pop. And, KG was my favorite player just because of that.
Yeah.
And when he got traded to Boston, I was literally probably the most happy Celtics fan because he was my favorite player at the time. And you would never imagine him coming to the Celtics at that time. And obviously, he teamed up with Pierce and Allen. They only won that one championship, which, they're probably all a little disappointed if they were honest with themselves that they only won one. But like you said, it was the end of all three of their careers. And it was just bad timing. I actually think if KG started his career at the Celtics, he would probably be one of the most revered athletes in Boston just because his intensity level and the way he played the game. People in Boston respect that.
Yeah.
He played hard every time he stepped on the floor. And, I came to college freshman year, and my whole side of my room, my roommate had all these posters up, and I only had one poster. It was a KG lifeline. It was a KG, like, 7-foot poster of him. Hung it up on my wall. Yeah, he was just a great guy. He was definitely intense on the court. I think he was a little not that way off the court.
Right.
It seemed like everyone loved him in the NBA. And like you said, him and Duncan, they'll probably go down together having, decent similar careers. Duncan obviously won more rings, but, KG definitely had better stats than Duncan in a lot of those seasons. So, yeah, one guy was quiet, one guy was loud and boisterous, but they both, were successful in what they did. First ballot Hall of Famer, like you mentioned, just a great guy, great player. He paved the way for guys like Anthony Davis, Karl Towns, guys like that 7-foot stretch guy that can hit those 18 now 3-point jump shots. Just a great guy. There's not really more you can say on him. Everyone knows how great he was. And now Paul Pierce, his teammate in the Big Three, he announced this will be his last year, so he'll have some tour coming down the stretch this season. He'll definitely get a great welcome in Boston when he comes for the last time. That's a night I'd probably buy tickets for and make the drive up to Boston to go see. One thing about Pierce for Celtics fans, he stuck it out. A lot of those years with him and Walker, we were pretty bad. We barely make the playoffs in the 8 seed. Then we started getting good, making some Eastern Conference finals. Obviously, we got KG and Allen. It changed everything. And I'm just I'm really proud of Pierce for sticking it out because a lot of players in this NBA, they don't want to. Just look at Kevin Durant. He doesn't want to win it with the Thunder. He wants to go and make it easier for himself. When Pierce stuck it out, and loyalty is a big thing in Boston. And, he's definitely one of the most revered Celtics of all time just for that fact.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he doesn't get, a lot like KG, he doesn't get a lot of the credit he deserves simply because he played on some bad teams, during the prime of his career. Because, I mean, like you said, early on in his career when the Celtics had Antoine Walker, there were some pretty good years, but then there were some really, really lean years leading up to the acquisition of KG and Ray Allen. Pierce, I mean, a lot of people don't realize this either. I mean, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a great all-around player. Really one of the, great college players ever, too. When you look at how awesome he was at Kansas for 3 seasons and then able to translate that to the NBA. But, like KG, he stuck it out with Boston. KG stuck it out as long as he pretty much could in Minnesota. But he stuck out in Boston, became one of the all-time. I mean, he's an all-time Celtic great, but he's probably the only all-time Celtic great that played the bulk of his career on some pretty bad squads. He was just so good. Had that unorthodox shot throughout his career that a lot of people kind of fell in love with him for because it's weird to see this dude shooting like an old man, throughout his career. But he was a solid 3-point shooter. You forget some of those great duels he had with LeBron when LeBron was, an up-and-coming player, some of those awesome playoff duels they would have. He was just a really underrated player. Of course, he's still going to have one more year, a valuable role player with the Clippers. If they could ever stay healthy and not have any off-court issues, who knows what they could do. Perhaps he can go out getting his second ring. But, 10-time All-Star, made All-NBA a handful of times. He was Finals MVP when he won all in 08. And, just one of the – he'll go down as one of the true legends in Celtics lore, which is a great thing to say. That's definitely in good company. Just a really underrated player, really versatile player because, I mean, he was pretty great defensively too. could shoot it from all over the court. What he lacked in athleticism, during his era, it was kind of, small forwards in Pierce's generation were expected to be, kind of like LeBron, attack first, fast, powerful. Pierce wasn't necessarily that. He was kind of a throwback in terms of his playing style. Wasn't the fastest guy, but a really great shooter. No telling what type of fame he could have gotten if he was playing on a great team during his peak years, but he stuck it out with Boston, and I'm glad he got his ring. And he like KG will be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, him and Garnett also are getting their numbers retired in the Boston Garden, which means a lot to I know both of them. Yeah, like you said, Pierce, definitely an underrated scorer. I mean, he could get to his spot. He would draw fouls. He actually lacked athleticism, but there were times he would get up and dunk it in someone's face once in a while. Yeah, he had a great. We call it a YMCA game, just a great old man post-up game. He could hit the fadeaway. He would just get to his spot and work you and just get that inch to shoot, and that's all he needed. He was wet. Great playoff player. Always wanted the ball down the stretch, which you love. And I put a lot of stock in Allen and Garnett both came over here, and I think it had to do with Pierce recruiting them. But when they both came over, Pierce made it known that he was the guy. He was the leader of the team. And, you have Allen and Garnett who are superstars on their respective older teams, both probably Hall of Famers, and they come over to the Celtics and Pierce is like, nope, you guys are taking the backseat to me. I'm leading this team. And that's, there's not a lot of guys in the NBA that have the balls to do that. So, yeah, Pierce, just an all-time great.
Yeah, because, at that point, KG and Ray Allen were locks for the Hall of Fame. Pierce was probably going to get in, but, he wasn't necessarily a lock back in, 2007 when they teamed up. But, yeah, he was definitely the guy that whole championship season. He was the dude. And he was really the MVP of that entire playoffs for him.
Yeah. Just a great player. We'll see him go down the stretch. I'm not sure the Clippers can get him a championship, but he is a key to their bench because their bench is pretty flat. So just two great Celtics, two great NBA players hanging up the shoes. Be sad to see them go. They're both great personalities as well. Heading over to the NBA season currently, J.R. Smith is still floating out there. It seems like we mention it every episode. J.R. Smith is still available. LeBron's been subtweeting the Cavs trying to get them to re-sign him. I'm not sure what is halting that decision. And then there are rumors come out that the Boston Celtics are interested. I'm not sure if that's the Celtics actually interested or they're just trying to, put that out there to see what other teams will do. What do you think about J.R. Smith still being out there? He was a big cog on that Cavs championship team. It's pretty interesting that he's still unsigned at this point. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, it hung up for a little bit.
No problem.
Can Justin, cut that whole thing out?
Yeah, he can cut it out, yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know.
No problem. Just go. I was just talking about J.R. Smith, so I threw it over to you. So you can just go with that, whatever. And Justin
just go right into it. All right.
Yeah.
It's funny. J.R. Smith, the other day when LeBron, gave the preseason speech to the fans at the Indians game, and a lot of his Cavs teammates were there. J.R. Smith was there, and they were having a good time up in the suite. Watching the game. It was kind of weird because, he's technically not a Cavalier right now. It's just kind of, LeBron's made some remarks to the media that he thinks is stupid, that Cavs management hasn't locked him up yet to a new contract. But he wants a lot of money. He's turned down a couple good deals. There are some rumors, that the Celtics and maybe some other teams would be interested. Based on the fact that he was at the Indians game, having a good time with his former Cavs teammates at the time. I don't think he's going to leave, but you got to wonder how that's going to affect his season. Because he was really the X factor for the Cavs the entire playoffs. He came there in that trade with Shumpert, and he really rejuvenated his career. He became a real respected guy. He was definitely the X factor. in the decisive Game 7 in the finals. In my opinion, he's the X factor throughout the playoffs. He's a vital guy. I mean, he's still really good, still an awesome 3-point shooter. He's vital to their team. I mean, people forget that even though Cleveland won it all, they did it with a kind of lackluster bench. So they really need J.R. Smith as their sixth man, as a top 3-point shooter coming off the bench. Losing him, I mean, if he doesn't get inked to a deal soon, if he comes in kind of late and he's flat and never really develops into a rhythm, I mean, that could affect their whole season. And, believe it or not signing J.R. Smith in a timely way could prevent the Cavs from repeating. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if a deal gets done within the next week or so, which it probably will, then, he'll still have some preseason action. He'll have a little time to get assimilated, in the first couple weeks of the regular season, should be back to top form. But I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time. He's already turned down some good deals. It's not like the Cavs have a ton of cap room, so it'll be interesting. Somebody's going to have to compromise, and it'll just be interesting to see how long this lasts.
Yeah, I think they'll end up coming to a deal. I just don't see where he fits in with the Celtics. I know that rumor's been out there. We already have a log jam at the 2 and the 3 pretty much. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he lands. I think he'll end up with the Cavs, like you said. He was in the press box with LeBron, Kevin Love during the Indians game, so that makes me think he'll be back with the team. There's still some other free agents out there, too. We got Josh Smith, Kevin Martin, Tyler Hansborough, Montez Eunice, Gary Neal, Mario Chalmers. There's some guys out there that could definitely help the team off the bench. Do any of those guys kind of stand out to you that they're surprising they haven't been signed? To me, I think Kevin Martin could be a good cog. Can still knock down a 3. Not that great defensively, but seems like a good guy that can come in off the bench and just stand in the corner and hit, threes in the playoffs or the regular season. Another guy, I actually like Monte Eunice. I think if he's in the right system where he has a good point guard feeding him the ball in those pick and rolls, I think he could be a good person as well. He's a good passer. He can hit the 18-foot jump shot. I don't know if he wants too much money for his skill set, but he has been injured, so maybe teams want to stay away from that as well. Do any of those names kind of jump off the page to you about free agents?
Well, I mean, obviously, Josh Smith, it's just crazy how quickly he fell off the face of the earth. It's like everywhere he's gone, since he fell out of favor with Atlanta, he just hasn't been able to catch on. You got to figure somebody will sign him. A couple of years ago, he was pretty good for the Rockets in their playoff run. He was god-awful at the free throw line, which caused some problems. But other than that, he was pretty solid. It's interesting to see that he's still a free agent. Typically NBA teams, unlike the NFL, maybe unlike MLB even, they like to have those veteran guys who will sign for kind of cheap. With the salary cap going way up, he figured that he would have already gotten a deal with a playoff caliber team. Like you said, Kevin Martin's a good one. I know he went to the Spurs midway through last year, and he was kind of stuck there on their bench. So that definitely didn't help matters. He was also on that, on the Timberwolves team, which was focused more on getting the young guys involved. But he's definitely a good one. Monte Eunice probably has the most upside of any of the big-time free agents, like you said. It's kind of weird that what happened to him within the past year. Because coming in, this time last year, he was kind of expected for last season to be his breakout year for him to really establish himself. But, and here we are a year later, and he's not even been able to catch on with a team. Here we are in the midst of the preseason. So it'll be interesting to see. Still some big names out there. I mean, of course, J.R. Smith's the biggest free agent, but his situation's kind of unique. But, you got to wonder how much longer Josh Smith and some of those other veteran guys will be out there because, the teams could definitely use them.
Yeah, I think once the J.R. Smith deal gets done, guys like Kevin Martin, Gary Neal, Mario Chalmers, they'll decide where they want to go as well. I think they're just waiting for J.R. Smith to sign because, we see this in the NBA nowadays. All these players want to sign with contenders. They want to get on the Warriors, the Cavs, the Spurs, the Thunder, I guess, teams like that because they want the best chance to win championships because none of the guys we named are in their prime per se. So they're just ring chasers at this point. So I think maybe some of them will even wait into the season a little bit to see how teams do.
Right.
We mentioned
Karan Butler's another veteran guy. I forgot to mention this out there. There are a lot of older guys that you have to catch on.
Yeah, Karan Butler seems like he's been in the NBA for like 20 years.
Yeah, UConn.
Yeah, UConn guy. Yeah, so we talked about the preseason earlier. Preseason is a great chance to the rookies get a lot of PT. We can see, who kind of stands out, who can maybe make contributions to their team moving into the season, while other players, maybe go into a bench role. I thought it was interesting that the Lakers announced that Brandon Ingram, who was a second pick, is going to come off the bench for that team. I know they have Luol Deng, like we mentioned in our free agent wrap-up. That kind of makes no sense because it kind of blocks Ingram from playing. Now we have Ben Simmons with this foot injury. We don't know how long he's going to be out for it. His agent says he's going to hold him out the whole season so he doesn't risk further injuring it. So, Simmons was the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. We're going to have to look down the list now to see who might win that award. But has there been any rookies that kind of stood out to you so far this preseason?
Everything I've read about Marcus Chris, kind of an unheralded guy coming out of Washington. He got drafted by Phoenix, who also took Dragan Bender. A lot of people kind of question why they would get two big 7-foot guys in the first round. But everything I've read about him and some of the highlights I've seen, he's been pretty impressive. He was impressive in Summer League. He's been pretty good so far in preseason. So, I mean, this is a Suns team that's in complete rebuild. So young guys like Chris are going to have to really step up right away. He was a guy that, not a lot of people knew about because, Washington hasn't exactly been a powerhouse these past few years. But, he was pretty good at Washington. One of those long, kind of gawky guys who can maybe develop a little more athleticism, but he's strong, definitely great around the rim, great on the boards. So he's been solid so far, which is definitely a good sign for Phoenix because I know they're in danger of being the worst team in the league this coming season. At least that's what kind of the general consensus thought is. So, but if some of their big name young guys really step it up right away, maybe they'll surprise people. But he's been one I've read about. Like you said, kind of weird about the Ingram thing. I wonder how long that'll last. I know they had Randall and Nance and some other big, young big guys, but Ingram is such a freak of nature, and he's so versatile in everything that he can do. He can play point. I mean, he played point forward at times at Duke, so I'm not really sure. I know the Lakers seem to kind of like to work rookies in. I mean, look at D'Angelo Russell. They took a while to work him in, and everything I've read about him this preseason is that he's about to really, really establish himself this coming regular season. So it just took a little while, but I don't know. I feel like Ingram proved in his one season at Duke that he was definitely NBA ready. Not really hardly anything to pick on in his game. He has an NBA style game, plays a lot like Durant did when he was young. So it'll be interesting to see how long they keep him on the bench because I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I think these bad teams like the Suns and Lakers, they should just play all their players and be fun to watch. I think the Suns will be extremely fun to watch. They'll get up and down. Like you said, they have Chris, who's just a rim runner. He'll have a lot of, highlights that will be on SportsCenter top 10. He's a freak athlete. He's great around the rim, like you mentioned. Bender, hopefully he can do some things. He can stretch the floor, at least for them. Up here in Boston, Jaylen Brown, I've been pleasantly surprised by him. He's obviously a freak athlete as well, but he's played great defense. I think that's where the Celtics are sort of building their team around. He needs some work on the offensive end. He's got pretty much one fadeaway jump shot move. Other than that, he pretty much needs to get a head of steam going, or he can't really create for himself. So he's a work in progress, but we already have a pretty good team. So he probably won't get more than 15 minutes a game. Two other guys I wanted to bring up. Thon Maker with the Bucks. He's been really good this preseason. I think he'll actually get PT for them. A lot of people looked at that pick and were kind of surprised. They reached for this guy who has had a lot of issues, I guess, behind the scenes. Whether he didn't play college, he became ineligible. He had a lot of handlers coming from the Sudan and Australia. But I think his skill set translates to the NBA. 7 foot, can block shots, can hit jump shots, can stretch the floor. I think the Bucks will need that outside shooting from their big guys when they have guys like Monroe and Henson who can't really stretch the floor. And then I absolutely love what the Atlanta Hawks did in this draft, and I think it's proving itself in the preseason. Taurean Prince at 12 from Baylor, kind of a hybrid, like DeMar Carroll type.
Yeah.
He's been great this preseason. And then they got DeAndre Bembry later in the draft from St. Joe's, just like a bouncy guard who is kind of like a Kent Bazemore type, another guy that Hawks used to have. I think they've both been great this preseason. And, a lot of these teams want to draft projects, but I think the Hawks went and got guys who can immediately play in their lineup. They got 2 guys that played, 3 years in college. They have experience. They're ready to play. And I think those guys will play big minutes for them off the bench. So I actually like what the Hawks did in that draft, and it's proving itself this preseason. And one last guy, Juanacho Hernangomez of the Nuggets. He's turned out to be the Nuggets have this front line of Jokic, Nurkic, and now Hernangomez. They're all great passers. Nurkic went for 20 and 15 in one of the preseason games. Not that that's saying a lot, but I've seen some passes from Hernangomez that are, pretty impressive. He might be one of the best passing big men in the league right now, and that's saying a lot for a kid that is coming over here from Spain and having to make the adjustment. So I'd keep my eye on him. I think the Nuggets will end up trading one of those 3 guys just because you can't have all those cooks in the kitchen. They all deserve PT. So yeah, Hernangomez, another guy we'll watch out for. We'll preview all the rookie of the year stuff next time, but we just want to touch on a few rookies that are really highlighting themselves in this preseason. Then the last thing we want to talk about, off-season winner. We'll remove the Warriors because they got arguably a top 3 player in the world. Kevin Durant going there obviously makes them the favorite to win the NBA championship. But other than that, who do you think had the best offseason across the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, hard not to say, Warriors. So they're kind of the exception to the rule. But aside from them, I'm going to have to say the Pacers. I'm a big fan of what they did, getting Al Jefferson, trading George Hill, who's I think he's definitely peaked. He's maxed out. And they traded him in a 3-team trade with Utah and Atlanta, and they got Jeff Teague, who is finally going to get into an environment that I think will be conducive for his style of play. He hasn't been happening in Atlanta these past few years. And, getting Big Al, assuming he'll be healthy this season, and with Paul George, who's one of the best in the world right now. I feel like, honestly, that coming in this season, they're the Cavs' biggest threat in the East. And if, J.R. Smith doesn't, for some reason, chooses not to re-sign and takes his talents elsewhere, who knows, man? The Pacers might end up being the team coming out of the East, going into the finals. And, they have a new coach, a guy who I felt got a bad rap when he got fired from the Trailblazers, and he stuck it out for an assistant for a good while. Nate McMillan, of course. They got rid of Vogel. That had kind of run his course. He had his chance. So I like the new blood. I like McMillan taking over with that squad. He did some great things in Portland, really helped turn that franchise back around. So yeah, I'm expecting big things from them. Like I said, I think they're going to be, Cleveland's biggest competition. And kudos to Larry Bird, because he did a good job this offseason. Getting Big Al and trading for Teague. I think those are 2 really smart moves. And they have some good young players, but most importantly, Paul George, he was back big time last year. I'm sure he's going to have yet another great year. He truly is one of the world's best players, arguably the NBA's most underrated player. But with Miles Turner and some other talented big men, I think the Pacers are really going to make some noise this year. They're going to be back.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good pick. I think Thaddeus Young will be big for them. He can stretch the floor and guard a bunch of different positions. They still have to prove it, though. Just like pretty much every other team in the East other than the Cavs. I know people are picking the Celtics, but they have to prove it as well because they haven't done jack shit with this roster they have right now. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the New York Knicks. I just think they'll make the biggest jump of any team in the NBA. They were downright terrible last year. You had Melo playing in the All-Star game when he wouldn't even play for the Knicks, milking his injury. And I think Phil Jackson's plan is coming into play. I don't really like the Jeff Hornacek signing as their head coach. I just don't think he did a good job with the Suns. But I think once he has Phil Jackson around him, maybe he'll change his system and it'll help him a little bit. In the offseason, they got obviously Noah. They got Derrick Rose. They signed Hernan Gomez's brother, Willie Hernan Gomez. They signed a guy, Kuzminskis, from Lithuania. And they signed Brandon Jennings on a cheap deal, which I think will turn out to be a steal. Because if you can get Brandon Jennings playing the right way and moving towards something, a goal, I think he can be a great player. He just needs to be motivated. I just think, when you're a team like the New York Knicks, you have to make a couple moves to make you competitive after the last couple seasons they've had. And obviously they're building around Porzingis at this point. They're trying to get the last couple years out of Anthony. I think if they can just get a healthy Derrick Rose, a healthy Joakim Noah, Porzingis, Jennings, Hernan Gomez, Kuminskis off the bench, I just think they can make, like we said, the East is wide open rather than the Cavs. I think they can make a pretty good run. One other team I wanted to mention, the Chicago Bulls. I'm not sure I like what they did, but they did get better. They got Rondo and Dwayne Wade. Like you said, they'll probably be up for it in the East as well. You put a bunch of shooters around Rondo, and he'll make them all stars. As long as he's not trying to get a shot and bounce the air out of the ball, I think the Bulls can be a pretty good team. Still pretty much questioning their defense. But, yeah, I think the Knicks and the Bulls are two teams that got extremely better this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. The Bulls had one of the strangest off seasons I think I can ever recall seeing in the NBA because, in a week, 1 week when Noah leaves, when Rose gets traded, it looks like they're about to go into all-out rebuilding mode. And then a week or so later, they somehow get Dwayne Wade to leave Miami, where he's played his whole career, and come back home to play in Chicago. They get Rondo. They get Jimmy Butler's happy. So I don't know what to think. I mean, it looked like like I said, for a week they were about to be bottom feeders, and then somehow they ended up better. I don't really know how you lose two staples of your team in Rose and Noah and end up maybe better. But I mean, Rose and Butler, the chemistry was not there. I don't think Rose was necessarily on the same wavelength with Coach Hoiberg either. I know Noah was unhappy with Bulls management towards the end. So it's probably a good thing they got those two guys out of there. No distractions. They're getting, Wade in there, who's obviously happy to be there. He chose to come there, chose to leave Miami to come there. So, there's a fresh start in Chicago. Yeah, I mean, they could maybe end up being Cleveland's biggest challenger in the East. But on the flip side, speaking of Noah and Rose, like you said, kudos to the Knicks. Last season was rough. Yeah, I'm not sold on the Hornacek hiring either. I do think it's good that they hired somebody who's not just one of Phil Jackson's cronies, because now they're going to get away from the triangle a little bit. I know Phil came out today and spoke about that. And that'll probably keep Melo happy. But, yeah, the Knicks are definitely going to be in the playoffs this year. As far as how good they'll be, I'm not sure. Knows a little bit to get back to all-star form. I know he really struggled at times this past season. But, yeah, if he can stay healthy, if Noah can stay healthy, if Melo can play smart, who knows? By midway through this season, they could be one of the NBA's best. It's definitely – it wouldn't really surprise me if they were a disappointment. I don't expect them to be, but, it's kind of weird because, I mean, they could maybe be the 2 seed in the East. They could maybe be the 7 seed in the East. We'll just have to see. But, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how all three of those teams we mentioned seasons turn out.
Yeah, the East is going to be fascinating. I think the West we pretty much know is going to be competing. We'll outline all that in our NBA preview podcast coming up. It'll be interesting to see, how we think the teams will come out and who will win the awards. We'll do that in the coming weeks, obviously, before the season starts. I think that's a wrap for episode 6 of the Eurostep podcast. Subscribe on iTunes, obviously. We're going to be bringing these to you guys every other week during the NBA season. I hope that's enough. We'll touch on all the big events, all the big games, all the big, trades when they happen, all that good stuff. So be sure to keep a lookout for that stuff. Thanks for joining, Cole. See you next time.
All right, man. Thank you.